If your wallet's feeling the pinch, and whose isn't these days, the best way to save on groceries and still eat healthy is to shop smart and take good care of your fruits and vegetables the minute you get home from the store. In today's video, we're going to cover 4 key things that make the difference between making the best of your groceries and the money you spent on them, or tossing them out when you don't and watching that money bleed down the drain. And I'll share my simple plan for how I prep and store all my fresh fruits and veggies. Welcome to Mediterranean Minutes, the channel that helps you learn to eat the Mediterranean way every day. If you live in the Mediterranean region like I do, it's a little bit more common to shop pretty often. So food waste is slightly less likely because I buy what I plan to eat for the next day or two. But whether you shop almost every day or make a weekly trek to the supermarket, it still amounts to the same pain when you throw something out. And hey, let's face it, we've all done it, haven't we? There are just 4 smart steps to take, and once you get into the habit of it, you'll be amazed at how much longer things last. Number 1, be choosy. Hey, it's your money. You have the right to be picky when it comes to picking your produce. Hunt for the best produce in that bin. And here's a really important point. Think about whether you're going to use it right away or later in the week, because stuff that's past its prime is one of the biggest reasons people throw out food. Almost 25% of it. Number 2, ready or not, here I come. There are 2 types of fruits and vegetables. Ones that ripen before they're picked and start to spoil from that point on, like strawberries and raspberries, or ones that ripen after they're picked, like apples and bananas. And they give off a naturally occurring ethylene gas as they ripen. And knowing which ones are which is really important when you put them away. The full list is pretty long, but don't stress about it. I have a handy-dandy cheat sheet that you can print out and tape to the fridge until it becomes second nature. And if you're interested, just click on the link in the description after you watch the video. Number 3, keep a safe distance. Another thing about these 2 types of produce is they don't like to be close to one another because ethylene-sensitive ones will go bad a lot faster if they're kept close to ethylene producers. So don't store these 2 types together unless you have a really good reason, like when you want to make some guacamole for the weekend and the avocado is too hard. Just put it in a paper bag with an apple or a banana for a couple of days and let that high amount of trapped ethylene help the avocado along. And with the price of avocados, cutting into one that's not ready or one that's way past its prime is really almost a crime. Finally, know before you put anything away where it's best to keep it: on the counter, in the cupboard, or in the fridge or freezer. As we get into it, I'll talk about 3 more things that can maximize shelf life. But for now, let's get started and put away my groceries. I like to set out whatever containers I plan to use, whether they're mesh or paper bags, sealable containers or towels. And it's easiest if I can see everything out on the counter as we divide it between what goes in the fridge and the freezer and what goes in the cupboard or on the counter. And then I think about whether they're going to be ethylene producers or ethylene sensitive. To get on to doing this, just tape that list to the fridge and in no time you'll do it automatically. These onions, they don't like humidity and they definitely don't like potatoes unless they meet up in a dish. They're best in a dry, cool, open bowl in a dark cupboard. But if you're like me, you tend to forget that they're there, just leave them on the counter away from the window. When it comes to potatoes and winter squashes, think cool, but not in the fridge because cold temperatures will actually turn their starches into sugars. They also need plenty of airflow, so a mesh bag or a wire basket works great. And be sure to keep potatoes in the dark. Light creates a poisonous toxin, and you'll know it when the potato starts to turn a shade of green. But if out of sight and out of mind is as true for you as it is for me, just put a sticky note onto the cabinet to remind you the potatoes are there waiting for you to make them into something great. Tomatoes are simple. Never refrigerate them if you want them to retain their flavor and texture. Just room temp and plenty of airflow are all these babies need. Garlic, with all the garlic we grow, I have different ways to store them, including peeling them and freezing the cloves in a little airtight bag. but mostly you can leave them on the counter with open air away from light. Bananas, avocados, figs, and pears all produce ethylene as they ripen. So leave them out on the counter, but when they're ready to use, but you aren't ready to use them, slow down the ripening process by transferring them to the fridge in a crisper drawer. My best trick to do with too many ripe bananas is simply peel them, put them in a little Ziploc, and store them in the freezer so they're ready for a morning smoothie. My best solution for basil, an herb I adore, is just to leave it out on the counter next to the window so I can snip some leaves as I need them. Or I head to the kitchen cutting garden and gather herbs fresh when we're at the farm. Now let's dive into the fridge. It's a good idea to make sure the fridge is clean, so give things a quick wipe down and get your produce drawers ready by lining them with inexpensive cotton kitchen towels to regulate moisture. A slightly damp one in the high humidity drawer and a dry one in the low humidity drawer. I couldn't believe what a difference it made when I started making this a habit. No more slimy mushrooms, flabby greens, or wrinkled peppers. And just refresh the towels once a week when you clean and prep your fridge before your next shopping trip. Remember I said I'd talk about 3 more things to know too? Well, before we start putting things away, these 3 things also make a big difference where you store your stuff. Humidity. It's usually best to have low humidity for things that rot, like fruit, or high humidity for things that wilt, like greens, or shrivel like mushrooms. It's the reason a lot of fridges have 2 different crisper drawers with adjustable settings. Now let's talk temperature. Does your produce do best in room temp, colder temps, or downright freezing? Temperature can make a big difference in flavor and texture, not to mention how fast it'll go bad. It's the reason why you wouldn't store tomatoes or potatoes in the fridge, and always store apples and oranges there. Finally, airflow and space. I think of it this way, sometimes I need my space, and so do my fruits and veggies. If you stuff too much in a drawer, there simply won't be enough airflow for things to keep in their best condition. 3/4 full is plenty. And by the way, that's a good reason to have a good idea of how much space you have before you bring things home from the store. Low humidity crisper drawer. This is where I store fresh fruit that gives off ethylene. Apples and blueberries, stone fruit like apricots, peaches, nectarines, plums, anything that should be isolated from the rest of the fridge as they ripen. If the drawer label says fruits, put these things there. You can leave things out at room temp if they're not quite ripe, but make sure they go in the crisper as soon as they are. High humidity crisper drawer. The high humidity drawer has a lot less air circulation, and it's best for veggies that'll wilt like greens and lettuces or shrivel like mushrooms, bell peppers, zucchini from dehydration. If the drawer is labeled vegetables, start storing these things there. I love mushrooms, but they are notorious for going bad fast if they're not stored right. And they last really long if they are. So just put them in a cloth or open mesh bag with plenty of airflow. They'll last much longer, I promise. Everybody has their favorite way to prep greens, but I like to wash and dry my greens really well before rolling them in a clean cotton towel or paper towel and placing them in an airtight plastic bag. This way, they're ready to use in a salad whenever I'm in the mood. And keep in mind that sturdy leaf lettuce will last at least twice as long as delicate greens like arugula and watercress. Keep broccoli and cauliflower in open plastic bags with a little paper towel to help retain moisture. Trim the tops of carrots and then pop them in Ziploc bags or prep them completely and store them in a jar filled with water. You can do the same for celery. And you have the advantage of having healthy snacks at the ready. I admit berries are a little fussy and usually a little expensive, but I love them too. Usually I just use them fresh from the market. But if the price is right, I'll stock up and save them for later in the freezer. Open shelves or spare drawer. All kinds of vegetables can go in the fridge in the open space. Remember, you've already safely sealed away the ethylene producers in their own low humidity crisper drawer. So things like citrus, cherries, grapes, and figs, pineapple, they're all good to go in the humidity environment of the refrigerator shelves. I'm lucky to have a third drawer, so that's what I usually use it for. Finally, in the door. Most people store milk in the door because it's easy to get at, but frankly, it's not the best spot because the door is the area of the fridge where the temperature fluctuates the most, and milk does best at a constant temperature, even the long-lasting milk that's popular here. But the door is a handy place for delicate fresh herbs that have a short shelf life anyway. After you trim the stems, store them in a glass of water in the door. Same for asparagus. The herbs will last twice as long, maybe longer. Open jars of condiments are also best when you can see them, not buried in the back where they'll only be discovered when they're way past their best by date. And if you want to prolong the life of your extra virgin olive oil and other nut oils, the door is an okay place for them too. But I have one final suggestion, and it's probably the most important way to make the most of your weekly grocery bill. Just start eating everything up. And if you want to learn more about eating the Mediterranean way every day, then please remember to subscribe and stay tuned for tasty ways to turn ordinary ingredients into extraordinary dishes. Or just start by clicking on this playlist.